Sign those papers, her ex sneered. Then the mafia boss appeared and took her home. The coastal wind off the Atlantic whipped through the narrow streets of Harborview, carrying the scent of salt and impending rain. Lily Carter pulled her thin beige coat tighter around herself, trying to hide the grease stains on her waitress uniform. She had not had time to change. Her shift at the diner had run 40 minutes over because the lunch rush refused to die down, and her manager, a man with less empathy than a parking meter, had threatened to dock her pay if she walked out before the tables were cleared. Now, she was running late for the meeting that would decide the rest of her life. Her breath hitched in her chest as she practically jogged down 4th Street toward the sleek glass building that housed the law offices of Pendergrass and Associates. Under her arm, she clutched a battered manila folder. Inside were her tax returns, her pay stubs, and a handwritten ledger of every hour she had spent building the bakery she and Darren had started 3 years ago. It was supposed to be their legacy. It was supposed to be the future for their daughter, Emma. Now. It was just another weapon Darren was using to bleed her dry. Lily checked the time on her cracked phone screen. 2:14 in the afternoon. She was 14 minutes late. Darren would love that. He would use it. He would spin it into proof that she was unstable, disorganized, and unfit. The thought made a cold knot of nausea tighten in her stomach. She pushed through the revolving doors, the blast of climate-controlled air chilling the sweat on her back. The receptionist looked up with a practiced, dismissive smile as Lily approached the desk, wind-blown and smelling faintly of fryer grease and maple syrup. "I am here for the mediation with Darren Cole," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know I am late. I am so sorry." "Room B," the receptionist said without checking a computer. "They are waiting." Lily walked down the hallway, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished marble. Every step felt like walking to an execution. She stopped outside the frosted glass door marked Conference Room B, took a deep breath that rattled in her lungs, and pushed it open. The room was aggressively neutral, decorated in shades of gray and beige that seemed designed to suck the emotion out of the air. Her public defender, a harried woman named Miss Albright, who carried 3 other case files in her bag, looked up with a sympathetic grimace. But Lily's eyes went instantly to the other side of the mahogany table. Darren was there. He sat with his legs sprawled out, occupying more space than one man needed. He was wearing a suit that Lily recognized immediately. It was charcoal gray, tailored Italian wool. It had cost more than Lily made in 3 months of double shifts. He had bought it 2 weeks ago, claiming he needed it for networking for his new bar venture, even though he had sworn to the family court judge just yesterday that he was nearly destitute. "Nice of you to join us, Lil," Darren said, a smirk playing on his lips. He checked his heavy silver watch, another extravagance. "Traffic?" "Work," Lily said shortly, sliding into the chair beside Miss Albright. She kept her hands in her lap to hide the tremors. "Right," Darren said, chuckling darkly. "Work. Always working. Never parenting. That is the issue, is it not, Miss?" Albright cleared her throat, shuffling her papers. "Mr. Cole, let us keep this professional. We are here to discuss the division of assets regarding the Sweet Harbor Bakery and to finalize the custody agreement for Emma." Darren's lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Vickers who wore a tie that looked like it cost $500, leaned forward. He did not look at Miss Albright. He looked directly at Lily, his eyes predatory. "There is not much to discuss," Vickers said smoothly. "My client has made a very generous offer. He's willing to assume full liability for the business debts, provided Miss Carter signs over her 40% stake. In exchange, he will not pursue backdated child support payments for the months she was unable to contribute. I paid the rent on the bakery for 6 months straight," Lily snapped, the injustice burning her throat. "I bought the ovens. I developed the recipes. The debt exists because Darren took out loans I did not know about." "Alleged loans," Vickers corrected lazily. "Without documentation. That is hearsay. What we do have is documentation of your current financial instability. You are working 60 hours a week at a diner. You live in a walk-up apartment in a neighborhood with a rising crime rate. You have no savings." He slid a stack of crisp white documents across the table. They stopped inches from Lily's clenched hands. Darren leaned in, the smell of expensive cologne and stale whiskey wafting from him. His eyes were hard, devoid of the charm he used to fool everyone in town. "Sign those papers, Lily," he sneered, his voice dropping so only she could feel the vibration of it. "You know you can't win this." Lily stared at the bold font at the top of the page, relinquishment of rights and custody modification. "I am not signing away custody," Lily whispered. "We agreed to 50-50. That was the deal." "That was before I realized how dangerous your lifestyle is," Darren said. His voice feigned concern now, loud enough for the lawyers to hear. "Emma needs stability. She needs a parent who is actually there, not slinging hash until midnight." "I work nights so I can walk her to school in the morning," Lily argued, looking at Miss Albright for support. "You know this. I am the one who packs her lunch. I am the one who helps her with reading. And you are the one who leaves her with a neighbor 3 nights a week," Vickers interjected. "A neighbor with a criminal record. I might add, Mrs. Gable got a parking ticket 10 years ago," Lily cried out. "It goes to character," Vickers said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. "The fact remains, Mr. Cole is the more stable parent. He has a new business venture opening next week. He has the means to provide. You do not." Lily felt the walls closing in. It was a trap. It had always been a trap. Darren had drained the bakery accounts, forcing her to take extra shifts at the diner to keep lights on. And now he was using her exhaustion and poverty, conditions he had created, as proof that she was unfit. She hesitated, her pen hovering over the paper. If she signed, she lost the bakery she loved, but if she fought and lost in court, she could lose Emma entirely. Darren would punish her for fighting. He always did. Suddenly, a sharp pain exploded in her shin. Lily gasped and jerked in her seat. Under the table, Darren had kicked her, hard. His face remained composed, a mask of bored patience, but his eyes were burning with malice. "Sign it," he muttered, his lips barely moving, "or I make sure you never see Emma again. I will bury you in so much legal paper you will be 80 years old before you get a visitation weekend." Lily's public defender was busy looking for a pen in her purse. She had missed the kick. She had missed the threat. Lily looked down at her hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. Her left wrist was throbbing where Darren had grabbed her 2 days ago when she tried to take her keys back from him. A faint yellow bruise peeked out from the sleeve of her coat. Fear, cold and paralyzing, washed over her. He would do it. He knew people. He knew how to lie. He would take Emma, and he would raise her to think her mother gave her up because she didn't love her. Lily started, her voice breaking. "I need time to read this." "We are out of time," Darren hissed. Just as Darren opened his mouth to deliver another ultimatum, the heavy door to the conference room swung open. It did not open tentatively. It opened with the weight of authority. 2 men stepped inside. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly, the air growing heavy and charged. The man in the lead was tall, with broad shoulders that filled out a black suit tailored to perfection. He had dark hair, slightly graying at the temples, and eyes that were the color of stormy seas, dark, intelligent, and utterly unyielding. He did not look like a lawyer. He looked like a king who had just walked into a peasant's hovel. Behind him stood a man who was clearly a bodyguard, shaved head, thick neck, hands folded quietly in front of him, scanning the room with a professional paranoia. "Excuse the interruption," the lead man said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth like aged bourbon but carrying an undercurrent of steel. He did not sound sorry at all. Vickers sat up straighter, adjusting his tie nervously. "Who are you? This is a closed mediation." The man walked to the head of the table, ignoring Vickers completely. He placed a leather briefcase on the mahogany surface with a deliberate thud. "My name is Dominic Moretti," he said. The color drained from Darren's face. Lily heard his breath hitch, a sharp intake of air that sounded like panic. Even Lily knew the name. In Harborview, the Moretti family was legend. They owned the shipping docks. They owned the high-end real estate. They owned the politicians. They were the mafia, though no one ever said the word out loud. Dominic Moretti turned his gaze to Darren. It was a cold, measured look, like a scientist examining an insect before dissection. "I am the owner of the building on Fifth Avenue where you are attempting to open your bar, Mr. Cole," Dom said calmly, "and I am here as a concerned creditor. I have the rent," Darren stammered, his arrogance evaporating instantly. He tried to stand, but his legs seemed to fail him, and he sank back into his chair. "The check is in the mail, Mr. Moretti, I swear." "Your check bounced," Dom said. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. 3 times, as did the deposit for the renovation permits. Dom opened his briefcase. His movements were precise, elegant. He pulled out a file, much thicker than Lily's, and slid it across the table. It fanned out, revealing bank statements, loan applications, and copies of signatures. "You are 4 months behind on payments before you have even opened the doors," Dom continued, his tone conversational but deadly. "This places you in default. Technically, I own everything inside that property. The fixtures, the stock, the liquor license." He tapped a specific document with his index finger. "And this," Dom said, looking at Vickers now. "This is a loan application submitted to a private lender last week. It uses the Sweet Harbor Bakery as collateral. The signature belonging to Miss Carter on the guarantor line is a clumsy forgery." Lily's head snapped up. "What?" Dom looked at her then. For the first time, the coldness in his eyes thawed, just a fraction. He looked at her not as a nuisance, but as a person. He took in the fraying cuffs of her coat, the exhaustion etched around her eyes, and the way she was holding herself, tight, defensive, terrified. His gaze dropped to her left wrist, where her sleeve had ridden up, exposing the bruise Darren had given her. Dom's jaw tightened, a muscle feathered in his cheek. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is this true?" Miss Albright asked, finally finding her voice. She grabbed the paper Dom had pointed to. "My client never signed this." "It is a misunderstanding," Darren said quickly, sweat beading on his forehead. "Paperwork error." "I was gonna fix it." "You committed fraud," Dom said, "and you are attempting to leverage a business you do not own to pay debts you cannot afford." He looked back at Lily. "Does he threaten you often, Miss Carter?" The directness of the question caught Lily off guard. She stared at this stranger, this dangerous man who had just walked in and dismantled Darren's lies in under 2 minutes. Lily started. She looked at Darren. His eyes were wide, pleading with her to shut up, but there was still that glint of violence there, the promise of punishment later. "He says I am unstable," Lily said quietly, her voice trembling. "He says he is the stable one." Dom made a sound that was half laugh, half scoff. "Stable, mister. Cole owes $40,000 to loan sharks in Atlantic City. He has a gambling addiction that he hides very poorly. If he gets custody of your daughter, the first thing he will do is use the child support payments to cover the interest on his debts." Darren slammed his hands on the table and stood up. The chair screeched against the floor. "You shut your mouth!" Darren shouted, his face turning an ugly shade of red. He lunged forward, leaning over the table toward Lily, ignoring the Mafia Don standing 3 feet away. "You put him up to this, didn't you? Lily, you think you can embarrass me. You are coming home with me after this, and we are going to settle this without—" Dom moved. It was a blur of motion, too fast for a man of his size. 1 second he was standing by the briefcase. The next he was between Lily and Darren. He did not shove Darren. He simply occupied the space, a solid wall of black wool and muscle. "Sit down," Dom said. The voice was low. It wasn't a shout. It was a rumble, like the warning growl of a predator. Darren froze. He looked at Dom, then at the bodyguard who had taken a step forward, hand drifting inside his jacket. "The meeting is over," Dom stated. He looked at Vickers. "Your client is leaving. If I see any further legal action against Miss Carter based on these fraudulent claims, I will hand this file to the district attorney. And if I hear that Mr. Cole has approached Miss Carter or her daughter again—" Dom paused. He turned his head slightly, locking eyes with Darren. "I will handle it personally. Do you understand?" Darren swallowed hard. He grabbed his briefcase, his hands shaking nearly as badly as Lily's had been earlier. "Let's go," he muttered to his lawyer. They scrambled out of the room like rats fleeing a sinking ship. The silence they left behind was deafening. Lily sat frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked up at Dominic Moretti. Up close, he was even more imposing. He smelled of sandalwood and expensive tobacco. "Are you all right?" he asked. The menace was gone from his voice, replaced by a surprising softness. I don't know," Lily admitted. She felt lightheaded. "Thank you." "I don't know why you did that, but thank you." "I dislike bullies," Dom said simply. "And I dislike bad investments. Darren Cole is both—" Miss Albright was staring at Dom with a mixture of awe and fear. "Mr. Moretti, I appreciate the evidence regarding the forgery. This changes everything for the custody case." "Good," Dom said. "Make sure it does." He nodded to Lily, a polite, almost old-fashioned gesture, and turned to leave. Lily packed up her things with trembling fingers. She needed to get out of here. She needed to pick up Emma. She needed to breathe. She hurried out of the office 5 minutes later, saying a hasty goodbye to Miss Albright. She took the elevator down to the parking garage, her mind racing. She had won, at least for today. But the look in Darren's eyes when he left, he wasn't done. He was desperate now, and a desperate Darren was a dangerous Darren. The parking garage was dimly lit and smelled of exhaust and damp concrete. Lily's footsteps echoed as she walked toward her beat-up sedan parked in the far corner. She fumbled for her keys. "You think you are smart, don't you?" The voice came from behind a concrete pillar. Lily dropped her keys. They clattered on the ground. Darren stepped out of the shadows. He had lost the suit jacket. His tie was loosened, and his hair was wild. He looked unhinged. "Darren, please," Lily said, backing away until her spine hit the cold metal of her car door. "The lawyers said—" "To hell with the lawyers!" Darren shouted. He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He grabbed her upper arm, his fingers digging into the bruise he had already left there. "You think because some gangster showed up, you are safe. You are nothing without me. Lily, you are a waitress. You are trash." "Let go of me," Lily screamed, struggling against his grip. "You are coming with me," Darren snarled, trying to drag her toward his car. "We are going to go get Emma, and we are going to explain to her why her mother is a liar. Let her go!" The voice echoed through the garage, amplifying the command. Darren flinched, spinning around, but he didn't let go of Lily's arm. Dominic Moretti stood 10 yards away, next to a sleek black SUV that looked like a tank disguised as a luxury vehicle. His bodyguard was already moving, closing the distance with terrifying speed. "I warned you," Dom said. He sounded disappointed, like a parent watching a child make a fatal mistake. Darren shoved Lily backward. She stumbled, hitting her hip against the side mirror of her car. "This is a domestic dispute. Stay out of it!" Dom's bodyguard reached Darren. He didn't punch him. He simply grabbed Darren's wrist, the one holding Lily, and twisted. Darren howled in pain as his grip broke. The bodyguard shoved him back, hard enough that Darren tripped over his own feet and landed on the dirty concrete. "Get in your car," Dom ordered Darren, his voice icy. "Drive away. If I see your taillights in this city tonight, you will never drive again." Darren scrambled backward, clutching his wrist. He looked from the bodyguard to Dom, realized he was hopelessly outmatched, and scrambled toward his vehicle. He shouted a string of obscenities as he retreated, slamming his door and peeling out of the garage, tires screeching. Lily stood by her car, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces of her composure together, but they were shattering. Dom walked over to her. He stopped a respectable distance away, giving her space. "Miss Carter," he said gently. Lily looked up. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears she refused to let fall. "He's going to come to my apartment," she whispered. "He has a key. The lock is broken." Dom frowned deeply. He looked at the bruised wrist she was cradling. "You cannot go home tonight," Dom said. It wasn't an order, it was a statement of fact. I have nowhere else to go, Lily said, her voice cracking. My sister is in Ohio. I can't afford a hotel. Dom hesitated. He looked at his bodyguard, then back at Lily. He slowly raised a hand, palm open, and held it near her shoulder but did not touch her. He waited until she nodded slightly before he lowered his hand, not making contact but offering a silent shield. Come with me, Dom said. With you? Lily asked, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in her throat. You are Dominic Moretti. I am, he acknowledged, which means I am the safest person in this city for you to be with right now. I have a guest suite. It is secure. No one gets through my gates unless I want them to. Let Darren cool off. Let my men find him and ensure he stays away. Lily looked at the black SUV. It was a terrifying invitation. Getting into a car with a mafia boss? It was insane. It was the kind of thing that ended with her face on a milk carton. But then she thought of her apartment door with the splintered jam. She thought of Darren's face, twisted with rage. She thought of Emma. I have to pick up my daughter, Lily said automatically, though she knew Emma was safe at her mother's friend's house until the morning. Wait, no, she had arranged for Mrs. Gable to keep Emma tonight because of the late mediation. Emma was safe. Lily was the target. We will ensure your daughter is watched and safe, Dom promised. But right now, you need to be off the streets. Lily looked into his eyes. They were dark, dangerous, and lived in. But there was no deception there. He wasn't looking at her like a prize. He was looking at her like she was a civilian in a war zone he controlled. Okay, Lily whispered. Okay. Dom nodded. He opened the back door of the SUV for her. She climbed inside. The interior smelled of leather and silence. The door closed with a solid, reassuring thunk, shutting out the noise of the garage and the world outside. As the car glided out of the garage and into the rainy Harborview night, Lily watched the city lights blur past the tinted windows. She was sitting next to a criminal, a man who destroyed lives for a living. Dom sat on the other side of the back seat, looking at his phone, giving her privacy. You do not owe him anything, Dom said suddenly. Without looking up, Lily turned her head. What? Dom locked his phone and turned to face her. The passing streetlights cast rhythmic shadows across his sharp features. You were sitting there thinking you owed him something because you were afraid, Dom said quietly. You do not owe anyone your signature, Lily. And you certainly do not owe anyone your fear. Not anymore. Lily let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 3 years. She leaned her head back against the headrest, closing her eyes as the car sped toward the outskirts of the city, toward the unknown. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt safe. The black SUV wound its way up a long, curving driveway lined with ancient oaks that blocked out the moonlight. Lily sat in the corner of the leather seat, her hands still clutching her purse as if it were a lifeline. The city lights of Harborview had faded miles ago, replaced by the heavy, expensive silence of the wealthy outskirts. They approached a set of wrought iron gates that looked less like garden decor and more like the entrance to a fortress. As the car slowed, red lights blinked on discreet cameras mounted on the stone pillars. The gates swung open silently, admitting them into a world Lily had only ever seen in magazines. Dominic Moretti's mansion was a sprawling estate of dark stone and glass, imposing and beautiful in a cold, architectural way. It looked like the kind of place that kept secrets very well. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The bodyguard, whose name Lily had learned was Russo, opened her door. "Watch your step, Miss Carter," Russo said. His voice was low and respectful, devoid of the leering condescension she was used to from the customers at the diner or Darren's drinking buddies. Lily stepped out onto the gravel. The air here smelled different, cleaner, sharper, smelling of pine and rain. Dom exited the other side of the vehicle. He did not loom over her. He stood near the hood of the car, waiting for her to orient herself. "We have guests tonight?" The front door opened and an older woman in a pristine uniform stepped out. She didn't look frightened of Dom. She looked efficient. "Just one, Elena," Dom said. Miss, Carter will be staying in the East Wing guest suite. Please see that she has everything she needs and find her something comfortable to wear. Her clothes have had a long day." Lily looked down at her uniform. It was stained, wrinkled, and smelled of the diner's fryer. She felt a flush of shame heat her cheeks. "I can wash them," Lily said quickly, her voice sounding thin in the open air. "I don't want to be a bother." "It is no bother, Miss Carter," Elena said with a warm smile that didn't feel forced. "Mr. Moretti's home is fully stocked. Please, come in out of the cold." They treated her like royalty. That was the most confusing part. Lily walked through the grand foyer, her sneakers squeaking on marble floors that cost more than her life's earnings. The staff she encountered, a man dusting a painting, another carrying a tray, nodded to her with genuine politeness. There were no side glances, no judgment. It unsettled her. She was used to being the invisible waitress, the struggling single mom, the woman Darren spoke over and spoke for. Here, people looked her in the eye and waited for her to speak. Elena led her to a suite on the second floor. It was larger than Lily's entire apartment. The walls were a soft cream, the furniture dark wood and plush velvet. "There are fresh towels in the bathroom," Elena said, placing a stack of folded clothes on the bed. "These are some of my daughter's things she left behind. They should fit. She's about your size. I will leave you to freshen up." When the door clicked shut, the silence rushed back in. Lily stood in the center of the room, trembling. The adrenaline of the confrontation at the law office was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. She walked into the bathroom, which was lined in white marble and chrome. She turned on the tap, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked up into the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Her hair was escaping its messy bun. She slowly peeled off her uniform. As the fabric fell away, she saw the map of her last few months written on her skin. She was too thin. She could see the outline of her ribs from skipped meals. And then there were the bruises, the yellowing one on her upper arm from last week, the fresh, angry red marks on her wrist where Darren had grabbed her in the garage just an hour ago. Lily traced the mark with a trembling finger. "What are you doing?" she whispered to her reflection. "You are in a mafia boss's house. You brought this darkness into your life. What about Emma?" The fear that she had made a terrible mistake clawed at her throat. Darren was a monster. Yes, but he was a monster she knew. Dominic Moretti was a wolf she had just invited into the sheep pen. A soft knock on the doorframe of the bedroom made her jump. She grabbed the thick white robe hanging on the hook and wrapped it tightly around herself, tying the sash with shaking hands before stepping out into the sitting area. Dom was standing in the open doorway. He had shed his suit jacket and loosened his tie. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He did not step into the room. He stayed on the threshold, respecting her space. "I wanted to check if the accommodations are acceptable," Dom said. His eyes flicked over her face, noting the damp hair and the robe, but he didn't leer. He looked concerned. "It is too much," Lily said honestly. "I'm not used to this." "It is just a room, Lily," Dom said. "It is warm and it has a lock. That is all that matters tonight." He hesitated, then gestured vaguely to the hallway. "I was going to make some food. I realized neither of us ate dinner, unless you would prefer to sleep." "I'm not sure I can sleep," Lily admitted. Her stomach gave a traitorous rumble. Dom's mouth quirked in a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Come. The kitchen is this way." Lily followed him downstairs, barefoot on the plush runners. The house was quiet now. The staff seemed to have vanished into the wings. The kitchen was a chef's dream: stainless steel, copper pots, a stove with 6 burners. Lily expected Dom to tap a bell for a servant. Instead, he rolled up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and a faint scar running down his left wrist. He walked to the fridge and pulled out a carton of eggs, a block of cheese, and a package of cured pork. "You cook?" Lily asked, surprised. "My mother insisted," Dom said, setting a pot of water to boil. She said a man who cannot feed himself is useless, and a man who cannot feed a woman is a disgrace. Lily watched him move. He was efficient, chopping the meat with rhythmic precision. There was an unexpected ease to him, a domesticity that clashed with the violence she had seen in his eyes earlier. "Can I help?" Lily asked, feeling useless standing by the island. "You can sit," Dom said. "You've been on your feet all day. I saw the shoes." Lily climbed onto one of the high stools at the island. Dom worked in comfortable silence for a while, the smell of rendering fat and pasta water filling the air. "How old is Emma?" Dom asked without turning around. 6, Lily said, a reflex smile touching her lips at the mention of her daughter. She is the best thing I have ever done. She wants to be an astronaut this week. Last week it was a veterinarian." Dom turned, leaning his hip against the counter while the pasta cooked. "And Darren? Does he know she wants to go to the moon?" Lily's smile faded. She traced the grain of the granite countertop with her fingernail. "Darren doesn't ask. He used to. In the beginning, he was charming. He made me feel like I was the only person in the world. But then, slowly, the world just got smaller. First he didn't like your friends," Dom said quietly. "Then your family was too critical. Then your job took too much time away from him." Lily looked up, startled. "How did you know?" Dom's expression softened, a shadow passing behind his eyes. "Because control always looks the same. Lily. It starts with affection and ends with a cage. I have seen it before. Men who feel small try to make the women around them smaller so they can feel big by comparison." The accuracy of his words hit her like a physical blow. Darren hadn't just hit her. He had erased her. He had made her doubt her own mind. "I just wanted to build something," Lily whispered. "The bakery. It was supposed to be ours, but I did all the work, and he took all the credit. And when I tried to leave, he made you feel like you couldn't survive without him," Dom finished. He moved the pan off the heat, tossing the pasta with the egg and cheese mixture. "He's a liar. Lily, you built that bakery. You are raising that girl. You are the survivor. He is the parasite." He slid a bowl of carbonara in front of her. It looked simple and perfect. "Eat," he commanded gently. Lily took a bite. It was rich and salty and comforting. "This is amazing," she mumbled. Dom sat across from her with his own bowl. His knees bumped hers under the overhang of the island. Lily flinched instinctively, but Dom didn't pull away, nor did he press closer. He just let the contact exist, a warm, solid presence. "My father couldn't boil water," Dom said, changing the subject. "He was a terrifying man, ran half the city, but if my mother wasn't home, he would eat cereal for dinner." Lily laughed. It was a rusty, jagged sound, but it was real. "My dad was the same. He once tried to make grilled cheese and set the toaster on fire. Who puts cheese in a toaster?" "An optimist," Dom quipped, his eyes crinkling at the corners. They ate in a comfortable rhythm, exchanging small stories. Lily told him about Mrs. Gable's cat who attacked mailmen. Dom told her about the time he tried to hide a stray dog in his room for 3 days before the housekeeper found it. For 20 minutes. Lily forgot. She forgot the mediation, the lawyers, the fear. She just saw a man with tired eyes who made excellent pasta and listened to her as if her words had value. "You know," Lily said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "You are not what people say you are." Dom swirled the wine in his glass, looking down at the dark liquid. "And what do people say I am?" "Cold," Lily said. "Ruthless, dangerous." Dom looked up, his gaze locking with hers. The humor vanished, replaced by a heavy intensity. "I am all of those things. Lily, do not mistake a quiet night for a gentle nature. I have done things that would make you run from this house if I listed them." "You helped me," Lily countered. "You didn't have to." "I told you," Dom said softly. "I dislike bullies. And perhaps I am tired of being the villain in everyone's story." "You are not the villain in mine," Lily said. The air between them shifted. It grew thick, charged with a sudden awareness. Dom's gaze dropped to her lips, then back up to her eyes. "I suspect I am the last person anyone expects to be a good listener," Dom joked weakly, trying to diffuse the tension. Lily laughed again. Lighter this time. Maybe, but you are good at it. The moment was fragile, beautiful, and abruptly shattered. A loud buzz from the counter made them both jump. Dom's phone lit up. Dom's face changed instantly. The warmth evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard mask of the dawn. He picked up the phone, his eyes scanning the screen, his jaw set in a hard line. "What is it?" Lily asked, the fear rushing back into her chest like ice water. Dom hesitated, then turned the phone around and slid it across the marble. It was a grainy photo, taken from a distance in the dark. It showed the front of the diner where Lily worked, standing on the sidewalk, bathed in the neon glow of the sign. It was Darren. He was shouting at the closed glass door. In his right hand, glinting under the streetlights, was a black pistol. Lily clapped a hand over her mouth, a strangled sob escaping her throat. "Oh, God. The girls. Is anyone inside? Is he—" "The diner is closed," Dom said quickly, his voice sharp and commanding. "My men took this photo 5 minutes ago. The staff had already left. The building is empty." "He has a gun," Lily whispered, her hands starting to shake violently again. "He's looking for me. He's going to kill me." "He's drunk and posturing," Dom said, but he was already typing a message on the screen. "I have sent a unit to your apartment and another to your friend Mrs. Gable's house to ensure Emma is secure. Darren does not know where she is." "He will find out," Lily cried, slipping off the stool. Her legs felt weak. "He always finds out." "I have to go. I have to get Emma. I can't stay here hiding while he—" She turned blindly toward the hallway, panic overriding all logic. "Lily!" Dom was there. He moved with that impossible speed, stepping into her path. He didn't grab her. He stood before her, a solid wall blocking her retreat into the dangerous night. "Get out of my way!" Lily sobbed, pushing feebly at his chest. "I have to go to her." "You cannot go out there," Dom said calmly. "That is exactly what he wants. He's flailing, trying to flush you out." "I am her mother," Lily screamed, the tears spilling over. "I can't let him hurt her." Dom stepped closer. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing her he was no threat. "May I?" he asked softly. Lily froze, her chest heaving. She looked at his hands, then his face. He wasn't trying to control her. He was trying to anchor her. She nodded. A jerky, broken motion. Dom lowered his hands, resting them lightly on her upper arms. His grip was warm and firm, grounding her. He ducked his head to catch her gaze. "Look at me. Lily?" She lifted her tear-filled eyes to his. "Emma is safe," Dom said, enunciating every word. "I have the best men in the city watching that house. Darren Cole is waving a gun at an empty diner because he is powerless. If you go out there, you give him power. You give him a target." "I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "I know," Dom said. His thumb swept back and forth against the fabric of her robe, a soothing, rhythmic motion. "But you are not alone, and you are not helpless. Not anymore. I have you. I have her. Do you understand?" Lily took a ragged breath. She could smell him. Soap, sandalwood, and the faint metallic scent of the night air clinging to his shirt. The heat from his body radiated into hers, chasing away the chill of the fear. She stopped fighting. Her breathing slowed, sinking with the steady rise and fall of his chest. "You have us?" she repeated, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "I have you," Dom vowed. The silence in the kitchen changed again. It wasn't comfortable domesticity this time. It was heavy, electric, and dangerously intimate. Lily became acutely aware of how close they were. Her hands were resting flat against his chest, right over his heart. She could feel it beating. Steady. Strong, a drumbeat of protection. She looked up at him. Dom was looking at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. His eyes were dark, the pupils blown wide. He looked at her mouth, then forced his gaze back to her eyes. Lily felt a pull she hadn't felt in years. Maybe never. It was a magnetic need to be closer to the source of this warmth. Without thinking, she took a half step forward. Her fingers curled into the lapel of his shirt, grazing the skin of his neck. Dom's breath hitched. His hands tightened slightly on her arms, not hurting, but holding on as if he were the one who needed anchoring. "Lily," he warned, his voice a rough gravel. "I don't want to be scared," Lily whispered. She didn't know what she was asking for. She just knew she didn't want him to let go. Dom closed his eyes for a second, a look of pained restraint crossing his face. When he opened them, the fire was still there, but it was leashed. He reached up, one hand leaving her arm to gently brush a loose strand of honey-colored hair behind her ear. His knuckles grazed her cheekbone, leaving a trail of fire. "You are safe here," Dom whispered. "But I want you to feel safe because you trust me, not because you are obligated to me, not because you are afraid of what is outside." He was giving her an out. He was refusing to be another man who took advantage of her vulnerability. The tenderness in his voice did more to undo her than any grand gesture could have. A flush rose on her cheeks, hot and telling. "I do trust you," she breathed. Dom stared at her for a long beat. The air between them crackled, the distance of mere inches feeling like a chasm they were both terrified to cross. Then, slowly, he stepped back. His hands fell from her arms. The loss of contact was a physical coldness. "You should sleep," Dom said, his voice tight. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day." He walked her back to the guest suite. They walked in silence, the unspoken attraction hanging heavy in the hallway. At her door, Lily turned to face him. She felt raw, exposed, and confusingly disappointed that he had pulled away. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the food, for everything." Dom rested one hand on the doorframe near her head, leaning in. He was close again, his body heat enveloping her. His face was inches from hers. Lily tilted her chin up, her breath catching. She watched his gaze drop to her lips. She saw the war in his eyes, the desire to kiss her battling the code he lived by. He leaned in further. Lily's eyelids fluttered shut. She could feel his breath on her cheek, but the kiss didn't come. Instead, Dom exhaled slowly, a shuddering breath. He pulled back, putting a foot of distance between them. "I will send a driver for Emma in the morning," Dom said, his voice husky. "I will have her brought here for the weekend. You should not have to choose between being safe and being a mother." Lily's eyes snapped open. Tears pricked at the corners again, but these were different. They were tears of gratitude. He understood. He really understood. "Thank you, Dom," she whispered. "Good night, Lily," he said. He waited until she entered the room and locked the door from the inside. Only then did Lily hear his footsteps retreat down the hallway, heavy and slow, leaving her alone in the quiet dark, safe but burning with the memory of his touch. The morning light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains of the guest suite, casting long, pale beams across the plush carpet. Lily stood by the window, her forehead resting against the cool glass. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles white. Down below, the gravel driveway curved toward the main road, empty and silent. She had been standing there for 20 minutes, waiting. Dom had promised that Emma would be safe. He had promised his driver was trustworthy, but trust was a muscle Lily had not used in a long time, and it had atrophied under years of Darren's gaslighting. Every minute the car was not there felt like an hour. Then, the heavy iron gates swung open. The black SUV rolled up the drive, moving with a smooth, silent weight. It stopped in front of the main steps. Lily's breath hitched. She watched as the driver, a man named Russo, who looked like he could bench press a small car, stepped out and opened the rear door. A tiny figure in a bright pink puffer coat hopped out. "Emma," Lily whispered, her heart giving a painful squeeze of relief. Emma was clutching her battered stuffed rabbit, Mr. Bun, by one ear. She looked around the massive courtyard not with fear, but with the wide-eyed wonder of a 6-year-old seeing a castle. The front door of the mansion opened. Dominic Moretti stepped out. Lily tensed. She pressed her hand against the glass. This was the moment she had dreaded. Emma was loud, chaotic, and unfiltered. Dom was a man who lived in shadows and silence. Dom walked down the stone steps. He was wearing a navy suit today, crisp and intimidating. He towered over Emma. Lily held her breath, watching. Dom stopped 2 feet from her daughter. He did not loom. Instead, he bent his knees, crouching down in his expensive suit until he was eye level with the 6-year-old. Lily could not hear what they were saying through the double-paned glass, but she saw Emma point a small, accusatory finger at him. Dom nodded solemnly. Then he pointed to himself. Emma giggled, the sound so bright Lily could almost imagine hearing it up on the second floor. Dom offered his hand, not to shake, but palm up, like an offering. Emma took it, swinging her arm as they walked together toward the house. Lily let out a sob she didn't know she was holding and ran for the door. By the time she reached the bottom of the grand staircase, the front door was opening. Emma came bounding in, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Mommy!" Emma shrieked, dropping Mr. Bun and launching herself at Lily's legs. Lily fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around her daughter, burying her face in the cold synthetic fabric of the pink coat. "I missed you, Em. I missed you so much. I got a ride in a spy car," Emma announced, pulling back. "It has tinted windows and buttons for the seats." Lily looked up. Dom was standing by the door, watching them. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were soft. "He says he is your boss's grumpy friend," Emma said, pointing at the Mafia Don. Lily let out a startled laugh, wiping a tear from her cheek. "He said that?" "I did," Dom said, his voice grave. It seemed the most accurate description. "He is not that grumpy," Emma whispered loudly to Lily. "He likes bunnies." "I merely tolerate bunnies," Dom corrected, closing the door behind them. "Come, breakfast is ready." The dining room was a cavernous space with a table long enough to seat 20 people, but Dom had set 3 places at one end, creating a small island of intimacy in the vast room. The table was laden with food, pancakes, scrambled eggs, fruit, and pastries that looked better than anything Lily had ever baked. Lily sat next to Emma, watching her daughter attack a stack of pancakes with gusto. Dom sat at the head of the table, sipping black coffee. "So," Emma said around a mouthful of syrup, "do you have a bakery too, Mr. Grumpy?" "Just Dom," he said. "And no, I own buildings. I leave the baking to the professionals. Like your mother." Emma beamed. "My mommy makes the best cinnamon rolls in the whole world. Daddy says they are okay, but he is wrong. He likes the ones from the store that taste like plastic." Lily stiffened at the mention of Darren. She glanced at Dom, afraid he would be annoyed by the chatter, but he was leaning forward, his elbows on the table, listening with genuine focus. "Store-bought pastries are a crime," Dom agreed seriously. "When your mother opens her own bakery, her real bakery, I expect I will be her best customer." "We are going to call it Emma's Hearth," Emma declared, "but Daddy says we can't because he owns the name." "Your father is mistaken," Dom said. His voice didn't change volume, but the temperature at the table dropped just a fraction. He looked at Lily, his gray eyes piercing. "Names belong to the people who give them meaning. We will visit your mom's future bakery someday soon, and it will be nothing like the one your father talks about." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. She looked at this man, this criminal, this danger, and saw the way he was carefully cutting a piece of melon for her daughter because Emma was struggling with her knife. "Thank you," Lily mouthed silently. Dom just nodded, turning his attention back to Emma's description of a sprinkle explosion at school. After breakfast, the housekeeper, Elena, offered to take Emma to the media room to watch cartoons. Emma, bribed with the promise of a movie on a screen the size of a wall, went happily. Lily and Dom were left alone in the sudden silence of the dining room. "You are good with her," Lily said, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I was worried." "Children are easy," Dom said, standing up. "They are honest. Adults are the ones who lie. Walk with me?" They moved to his study, a room lined with books and smelling of leather and old paper. Dom walked to his desk and picked up a file. "I spoke to my lawyers this morning," Dom said, his tone shifting to business. "We are going to initiate a forensic audit of Darren's finances. We are going to challenge every loan he took out in your name. We will prove coercion." Lily crossed her arms, a defensive habit she couldn't break. "Lawyers like yours cost money. Dom, money I do not have." "I did not ask for money," Dom said. "Then what?" Lily asked, her voice rising slightly. "Men like you don't do favors. There is always a price. Is it the bakery? Do you want to cut, or is it—" She trailed off, looking away. Dom walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her, forcing her to look at him. "I am not Darren," he said firmly. "I do not look at you and see an asset to be stripped. I look at you and see someone who has been fighting a war alone for too long." "Why?" Lily whispered. "Why do you care?" Dom looked at her. Really looked at her. His gaze traveled from her eyes to her lips, then down to her hands, which were clenched at her sides. The desire in his eyes was raw and undisguised, but he didn't move to touch her. "Let us just say I have a weakness for lost causes," he said, his voice rough, "and beautiful women who don't know their own strength." Lily felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She turned away, overwhelmed by the intensity of his focus. "Emma usually naps around 1. I need some air." "The gardens are private," Dom said. "I will join you." An hour later, the house was quiet. Emma was asleep in the guest room. Lily stepped out onto the stone terrace at the back of the house. The garden was expansive, a maze of manicured hedges and stone paths that wound through winter-bare trees. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain, and the wind had a bite to it. Dom fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for a while, the only sound the crunch of gravel under their shoes. "I grew up in a house like this," Dom said unexpectedly. "Big, empty. My father believed that noise was a sign of weakness. I learned to be quiet very young." "My house was the opposite," Lily said, smiling faintly. "Tiny. Thin walls. My mom yelled. My dad yelled. The TV was always on. I used to hide in the pantry just to hear myself think." "And now?" Dom asked. "What do you want now?" "Peace," Lily said immediately. "I just want to bake bread and know that when I go home, the locks work and no one is screaming at me." A gust of wind tore through the garden, whipping Lily's hair across her face. She shivered violently, rubbing her arms through her thin sweater. Without a word, Dom stopped. He shrugged off his suit jacket. The movement was fluid and automatic. He stepped behind her and draped the heavy wool over her shoulders. The jacket was warm and smelled intensely of him. Cedar, rain, and spice. The weight of it felt like an embrace. Lily froze. Dom didn't step away. He stood behind her, his hands resting on the shoulders of the jacket, adjusting the collar so it covered her neck. His hands lingered there, heavy and warm. "Better?" he asked, his voice low near her ear. "Yes." Lily breathed. She turned slowly to face him. Dom was now in just his white dress shirt and vest, the wind pressing the fabric against his chest. He looked rugged, elemental. Lily reached up, her fingers clutching the lapels of his jacket, pulling it tighter around herself. It was an instinctive gesture, trying to wrap herself in his protection. Dom's gaze flickered over her face. He looked at the faint freckles dusting the bridge of her nose, the tiny worry lines between her eyebrows that he wanted to smooth away with his thumb. The conversation had died. Words felt clumsy, unnecessary. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of the things they were afraid to say. They began to walk again, but the distance between them had vanished. Their arms brushed with every step. They reached a quiet alcove near the high stone wall that bordered the estate. An old stone bench sat beneath a trellis of dormant vines. It felt hidden, a world away from the staff, the guards, and the reality waiting outside the gates. Lily stopped. She looked at the gray stone, her resolve crumbling. "I am so lonely, Dom," she admitted. The words fell out of her, unbidden. "I have been lonely for years, even when Darren was there, especially when he was there." Dom turned to her. He didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. "And being here." Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It is terrifying. Not because of who you are, but because you look at me like I matter, and I am terrified that you have the power to save me or destroy me with one phone call. I don't know how to be safe with a man who is so dangerous." Dom reached out. He took her left hand, the one Darren had bruised. He held it gently, his thumb tracing slow, hypnotic circles over her knuckles. "I am a dangerous man, Lily," Dom said softly. "I will not lie to you about that. I have blood on my hands, and I have enemies who would kill me to take what I have." He stepped closer, invading her space, filling her vision. "But I swear to you," he vowed, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper, "I will never use you as leverage. I will never use my power to take from you. I only want to use it to keep the world from breaking you." The sincerity in his voice broke the dam inside her. The fear that had been holding her back, the fear of men, of power, of being hurt again, was washed away by a surge of longing so strong it made her knees weak. Lily stepped closer. She placed her free hand flat against his chest. She could feel the steady, heavy thrum of his heartbeat through the cotton of his shirt. It was beating fast, just like hers. "Dom?" she whispered. Dom let out a ragged breath, as if he had been holding it for hours. He released her hand and brought both of his hands up to cup her face. His palms were warm, rough with calluses, contrasting with the gentleness of his touch. His thumbs brushed over her cheekbones, tilting her face up to his. He searched her eyes, looking for hesitation, looking for fear. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "Tell me to stop, and I will never cross this line again." Lily shook her head slightly. She couldn't speak. She didn't want him to stop. She nodded, just once. Dom made a low sound in his throat. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips met hers, it wasn't an assault, it was a question. The kiss started soft, hesitant. It was the brush of lips, testing the waters, tasting the air between them. Lily stood frozen for a heartbeat, and then she melted. She sighed into his mouth, her body softening against the hard line of his. Dom took that as the permission he needed. The kiss deepened, growing slower, heavier. Lily's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, gripping him, anchoring herself. Dom's hand slid from her face to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, holding her head steady as he changed the angle of the kiss. The world dropped away. There was no Darren, no bakery, no mafia. There was just the taste of coffee and mint, the scratch of his stubble against her chin, and the overwhelming heat of his body. Lily pressed closer, rising on her tiptoes. She felt the solid, unyielding strength of him, a fortress that had opened its gates only for her. Dom groaned, a vibration she felt against her own lips. The control he wore like armor cracked. He kissed her with a sudden, controlled intensity, his mouth moving over hers with a hunger that stole her breath. His free hand slid down her spine and settled at the small of her back, pulling her flush against him. He held her close, so close she couldn't tell where her heartbeat ended and his began. But he didn't grasp or grope. He held her like she was something precious that might break if he squeezed too hard. Lily opened to him, meeting his passion with her own desperate need. She hadn't been touched like this, with reverence and desire, in years, maybe never. They broke apart only when air became a necessity. Dom rested his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. Lily kept her eyes closed, trying to steady the spinning world. Her lips felt swollen, her skin electric. Dom started, his voice a wreck. "I have been trying very hard not to do that." Lily let out a shaky laugh, opening her eyes to look at him. His pupils were blown wide, his face flushed. "Me too." "I'm not sorry," Dom said, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "Neither am I," Lily whispered. They stood there in the gray light of the garden, wrapped in each other and the stolen jacket, smiling dazed smiles like teenagers. It was a moment of pure, crystalline happiness. And then the phone in Dom's pocket buzzed. It wasn't a text notification, it was the long, insistent vibration of a call. Dom stiffened. The softness vanished from his face instantly, replaced by the mask of the dawn. He pulled away from her, though his hand lingered on her arm for a second before dropping. He pulled the phone out. "It is Marco, my lieutenant. He wouldn't call unless it was urgent," Dom answered, putting the phone to his ear. "Talk." Lily watched him, wrapping the jacket tighter around herself as the cold air rushed back in to replace his warmth. She saw Dom's eyes narrow. She saw his jaw clench until the muscle feathered. "Where?" Dom asked sharply. Are you sure? He listened for another moment, his expression darkening with every second. Get eyes on them. Do not engage yet. I am coming in. Dom hung up. He looked at Lily, and the regret in his eyes was palpable. What is it? Lily asked, fear curling in her stomach again. It is Darren, Dom said grimly. Is he at the apartment? No, Dom said. He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. He was just spotted entering a warehouse in the shipping district. He's meeting with the Ricci family. Lily frowned, confused. Ricci? Who are they? They are a rival syndicate, Dom explained, his voice hard. They have been trying to take my territory for years. They are violent, reckless, and they have no code. Dom looked toward the house, then back at Lily. Darren isn't just a bitter ex-boyfriend anymore. Lily. He's trading information about my business and offering them access to your legal situation to get to me. He has made himself a pawn in a war. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. A war? Because of me? No, Dom said firmly, grabbing her shoulders. Because he is a fool who made a deal with devils he doesn't understand. But it changes things. It means you are not just a target for him. You are a target for them. He looked at the garden gate, then back at her. The memory of the kiss already fading behind the wall of necessary violence rising in his eyes. We need to go inside, Dom said. Now. The heavy oak door of Dominic Moretti's home office was closed, shutting out the rest of the mansion, but it could not shut out the tension that filled the room. The air smelled of stale coffee and serious decisions. Lily sat in a high-backed leather chair in the corner, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, feeling like an intruder in a world she did not understand. Dom stood behind his massive desk, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened. He was flanked by 3 men. One was Russo, the bodyguard who had driven her. The other 2 were older, harder men with scars that spoke of violence lived and survived. They were looking at a map of Harborview spread out across the desk, their voices low and urgent. The Ricci family has been quiet for 2 years. One of the men, a sharp-eyed lieutenant named Marco, said, they stayed in the shipyards. They stayed out of the downtown redevelopment. Now, suddenly, they are meeting with a low-level bar owner who owes money all over town? It does not track, Dom. It tracks if they are desperate for a foothold in the commercial district, Dom replied, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Lily's chest from across the room. Darren Cole is not just a bar owner. He's a man with a grudge and a legal claim to a business that, if expanded, could launder a significant amount of money. But more importantly, he has something the riches want. What is that? Marco asked. Dom looked up, his gray eyes locking onto Lily in the corner. Leverage against me. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. The words floated in the air. Leverage, territory, laundering. These were words from the news, from movies, not from her life of baking cinnamon rolls and worrying about electric bills. They know I have taken an interest, Dom continued, turning back to his men. Darren has likely sold them the story that I am vulnerable here, that I have broken my own rules to intervene in a domestic dispute. The richest see this as weakness. They think if they squeeze Darren, Darren squeezes Lily, and I will make a mistake to stop it. Lily stood up. Her legs felt shaky. I am sorry. The room went silent. The 3 men turned to look at her. I am so sorry, Lily repeated, her voice trembling. If I hadn't come to you, if I hadn't gotten in that car, none of this would be happening. You shouldn't be involved in this. I am dragging you into a war. Dom moved. He walked around the desk, ignoring his lieutenants, and crossed the room to where she stood. He stopped inches from her, blocking the view of the other men with his broad shoulders. Stop, Dom said gently. But it is my fault, Lily whispered, tears pricking her eyes. You have a business, you have a life, and now you have a rival crime family coming after you because my ex-boyfriend is a lunatic. Dom reached out, taking her hand. He gave it a firm squeeze, hidden from the room by the angle of his body. His skin was warm, his grip grounding. Darren Cole made his own choices, Dom said, his voice dropping so only she could hear. He chose to gamble away money he didn't have. He chose to threaten the mother of his child. And he chose to walk into a room with the Ricci syndicate. You did not make him do any of those things. You are surviving him. Lily, that is not a crime. He squeezed her hand again, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You are not a burden, Dom vowed. You are someone I want to protect. There is a difference. Lily looked up at him, searching his face. The hardness was there, the steel that ran his empire, but beneath it was that same tenderness he had shown her in the garden. She took a breath and nodded. Dom turned back to the room, his hand leaving hers but the warmth lingering. We move them tonight, Dom announced to his men. The mansion is a fortress, yes, but it is a target. It is isolated. If the Riccies make a move, they will expect her here. We are going to the safe house on 4th Street. The apartment? Marco asked, raising an eyebrow. It is in the middle of the city. Exactly, Dom said. Hidden in plain sight, controlled access, steel-reinforced doors, and it is 3 blocks from the police precinct. Even the Riccies are not stupid enough to start a firefight there. I still have to work, Lily said, her voice finding a little more strength. Dom frowned, turning back to her. Lily, it is too dangerous. I have to, she insisted. If I stop working, Darren's lawyer will use it in court. He will say I have no income, that I am unstable. I cannot give him that ammunition. And besides, I need to feel normal. I cannot just sit in a room waiting for something to happen. Dom stared at her, his jaw working as he weighed the risks. He clearly hated the idea, but he also respected the fire in her eyes. Fine, Dom conceded reluctantly, but you do not go alone. Russo goes with you. He sits at the counter. He drinks coffee. He does not leave your side until you are back in the safe house. Lily nodded. I can work with that. The move happened swiftly and silently under the cover of darkness. Emma, who thought this was all part of a grand adventure, was delighted by the sleek, modern apartment in the city center. It was located on the top floor of a secure building, accessible only by a keycard elevator. The next 3 days were a blur of tension and routine. Lily went to the diner. Russo sat at the counter, a silent sentinel who drank an alarming amount of black coffee and glared at anyone who looked at Lily for too long. Darren did not show up. The silence from him was more terrifying than his shouting. On the 4th evening, Lily returned to the safe house after a grueling double shift. Her feet ached, her apron smelled of onions, and her head was pounding from the stress of constantly looking over her shoulder. She keyed into the apartment. The living room was softly lit. Emma was already asleep in the 2nd bedroom. Lily had texted the nanny Dom had hired, a stern but kind woman named Martha, to put her down at 8. Dom was there. He was sitting at the small kitchen table, papers spread out around him. He had shed his jacket, and his white shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing the corded muscles of his forearms. He held a pen in one hand and a glass of amber liquid in the other. A man in a sharp suit, his lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, was packing a briefcase across from him. We have the affidavits, Blackwood was saying. The forensic accountant found the discrepancies in the bakery's ledger. It is enough to file for an emergency injunction against Darren regarding the business assets. Good, Dom said. He looked up as the door clicked shut. His eyes softened instantly when he saw Lily. You're late. Inventory ran long, Lily said, dropping her purse on the sofa. Russo was not happy about it. Russo is never happy, Dom said dryly. Blackwood stood up, nodding politely to Lily. Miss Carter, I will have these filed first thing in the morning. Thank you, Lily said, though she barely had the energy to smile. When the lawyer left, the lock clicking heavily into place, the energy in the room shifted. It went from professional to personal in the space of a heartbeat. Lily walked over to the sofa and collapsed onto it, letting her head fall back against the cushions. She closed her eyes, letting out a long, shuddering sigh. Rough day? Dom asked. I hate it, Lily confessed, her voice thick with emotion. I hate looking at every customer who walks in and wondering if they know Darren. I hate that Russo has to walk me to the bathroom. I feel like a prisoner in my own life. The cushion beside her depressed. Dom sat down. He was close enough that his knee brushed against hers. He didn't pull away. "It is humiliating," Lily continued, opening her eyes to look at the ceiling. "I worked so hard to be independent, to show the court that I could do this on my own. And now, I am the woman who needs a bodyguard to pour coffee. If Darren knew, he would be laughing." "Darren is not laughing," Dom said quietly. "He's scrambling, and you are not weak for accepting help. Lily, you are fighting a war against a man who cheated. You cannot win a rigged game by playing by the rules." Lily turned her head to look at him. He looked tired tonight. There were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights spent strategizing for her safety. "How do you do it?" Lily asked softly. "Live like this? Always looking over your shoulder?" Dom took a sip of his drink, his gaze focused on the far wall. "I was born into it. My father, he was a hard man. He built the family business on fear. When he died, I was 22. I had to take over, or the vultures would have torn us apart." He turned the glass in his hand, the ice clinking softly. "I had to become hard to survive," Dom admitted. "I had to do things that kept me awake at night, but I made a promise to myself that I would have a code, that I would not be a monster like the men we fought. We protect the vulnerable. We keep our word. We do not hurt women or children." He looked at her then, and his eyes were unguarded, revealing a depth of loneliness that matched her own. "It is a heavy thing," Dom whispered, "trying to be a good man in a bad world." Lily saw the strain in the set of his jaw. She saw the boy he must have been, forced to grow up too fast, forced to become iron to protect his family. Without thinking, she reached out. She placed her hand over his where it rested on his knee. Her thumb brushed gently along the inside of his wrist, over the steady pulse of his lifeblood. "You are a good man, Dom," she said. "I know you are." Dom went still. He looked down at her hand, pale and small against his dark trousers. Then he looked up, and his eyes had darkened, the gray turning to the color of a stormy sea. He shifted closer, his leg pressed firmly along the length of hers. The heat of his body radiated through their clothes. "Lily," he warned, his voice rough. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Dom lifted her hand from his knee. He brought it slowly to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his lips warm and firm. He lingered there, his breath ghosting over her skin, sending a jolt of electricity straight to her core. Heat coiled low in her stomach, a heavy, aching want that she hadn't felt in years. She was tired of being scared. She was tired of thinking about courts and lawyers and ex-boyfriends. She wanted to feel alive. She leaned in. Dom met her halfway. The kiss was not like the one in the garden. That had been tentative, an exploration. This was urgent. It was a collision of two people who had been holding back the ocean for too long. Dom groaned low in his throat, a sound of surrendered control. He dropped her hand and cupped her face, his fingers threading into her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the angle. His mouth was hot, demanding, tasting of whiskey and desire. Lily made a soft sound of need. She shifted on the couch, climbing slightly onto her knees so she could reach him better. Her hand slid up his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath the crisp white shirt, and wrapped around his neck. Her fingers tangled in the short hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer. Dom's hands settled at her waist. His grip was firm, possessive, pulling her body flush against his. She could feel the strength of him, the sheer power he held in check, but his touch remained careful. He treated her like she was precious glass, even as he kissed her like he was starving. He broke the kiss for a fraction of a second, his forehead resting against hers, their breath mingling in harsh gasps. "You can stop," Dom whispered hoarsely, his voice wrecked. "Tell me to stop at any time, Lily." "Don't stop," Lily breathed. "Please." She captured his lips again, kissing him with a fierce intensity that surprised them both. Dom responded, his arm sweeping around her back to hold her securely. He pulled her onto his lap, her legs straddling his waist, reducing the distance between them to 0. The world narrowed down to the sensation of his hands on her back, his mouth moving along her jawline, the scratch of his stubble against her sensitive skin. He kissed the sensitive spot below her ear, and Lily arched her back, a gasp escaping her lips. "You are so beautiful," Dom murmured against her skin. "I have wanted to do this since the moment I saw you standing in that conference room." Lily held him tighter, burying her face in the crook of his neck, breathing in his scent. She felt safe. She felt desired. She felt like she was home. Dom's hand moved up her spine, pressing her closer, his forehead resting against hers. He held her there, breathing deeply, as if trying to memorize the feeling of her in his arms. It was a moment of profound connection, a silent promise that this was more than just physical. And then, the phone on the coffee table buzzed. It was a sharp, jarring sound that sliced through the haze of passion like a knife. Dom froze. His body went rigid against hers. He pulled back, his eyes clearing instantly, the desire replaced by the cold calculation of the predator. He reached for the phone, checking the screen. "Damn it," Dom cursed softly. He shifted, gently lifting Lily off his lap and setting her back on the cushions. He stood up, buttoning his shirt cuffs with efficient, jerky movements. "What is it?" Lily asked, her voice trembling, her lips still swollen from his kisses. Dom turned the phone screen toward her. It showed a live feed from one of the security cameras mounted outside the building. A dark sedan was circling the block. It slowed as it passed the front entrance. Even in the grainy footage, the license plate was visible. "It is Darren," Dom said, his voice ice cold. "He found us." Lily felt the blood freeze in her veins. The warmth of the last few minutes evaporated, replaced by the familiar, suffocating dread. How? How did he know? "I do not know," Dom said, walking to the window and peering through the blinds. "But he is not alone. There is a second car trailing him. That is Ricci Muscle." He turned back to her. The lever was gone. The boss was back. "Lily, listen to me," Dom commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Take Emma into the interior bedroom. It has a reinforced door. Lock it. Do not open it for anyone but me or Russo. Do you understand?" "What are you going to do?" Lily asked, standing up, her hands shaking. "I'm going to handle it," Dom said. He walked to a hidden panel in the wall near the kitchen and opened it. Inside was a black holster. He strapped it on with practiced ease. "Dom," Lily whispered, terrified. He walked over to her, grabbing her shoulders. He kissed her forehead, hard and quick. "Go," he ordered. "Now." Lily ran to the bedroom. She woke a groggy Emma and ushered her into the windowless panic room that doubled as a walk-in closet. She locked the heavy deadbolt with trembling fingers. Through the crack in the door before she closed it, she looked back at the living room. Dom stood in the center of the space. He was checking the clip of his weapon. His posture was calm, commanding, and utterly terrifying. He looked like a man preparing for war. Lily clicked the lock shut, sliding down to the floor with her back against the door, pulling Emma into her lap. She realized then, with a sinking heart, that she had crossed a line. She wasn't just observing this world anymore. She was part of it, and she was completely, irrevocably dependent on the dangerous man standing guard on the other side of the door. The streetlights on 4th Street hummed with an electric buzz, casting long, frantic shadows against the brick facade of the safe house. Inside, Lily stood pressed against the window blinds, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the scene unfold on the pavement below. Dominic Moretti's men had intercepted the dark sedan before it could circle the block a third time. 2 black SUVs had boxed the car in against the curb, their headlights blinding the driver. Lily watched as Russo stepped out, his hand resting conspicuously on his hip, signaling a threat without drawing a weapon. But Darren Cole did not look frightened. Through the crack in the blinds, Lily saw him roll down his window. He was grinning. It was a manic, jagged expression that sent a shiver of true revulsion down her spine. He said something to Russo, gesturing wildly toward the apartment building. Russo stiffened, leaning in to deliver a low warning, but Darren just laughed. He pointed a finger at the building, then mimed making a phone call. "He's enjoying this," Lily whispered, stepping back from the window as if he could see her. Dom stood behind her, his face a mask of granite. He is posturing, he has new friends, and he thinks that makes him untouchable. Below, Darren gunned the engine of his car. He shouted something loud enough to carry up to the 3rd floor, his voice echoing off the silent buildings. "Tell her the cops are coming next time. I will tell them you kidnapped them. Let us see who the judge believes then." With a screech of tires that smelled of burnt rubber, Darren swerved around the SUV and sped off into the night. Lily turned to Dom, panic clawing at her throat. "Did you hear him? He's going to call the police. He's going to say you took us." "Let him call," Dom said calmly, though his eyes were hard. "We have the documentation. We have the proof of his fraud. The police will not touch this." "You do not understand," Lily cried, her voice rising. "Darren is a liar, but he is a charming liar. If he spins a story that a mafia boss snatched his daughter, the police will kick down that door before they look at your spreadsheets. They will take Emma. They will put her in foster care until the investigation is over." "I will not let that happen," Dom stated. "You cannot stop the entire police force." "Dom!" Lily snapped. She began to pace the small living room, her hands tangling in her hair. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. By coming here, by involving you, I have given him a weapon. I have turned a custody battle into a criminal investigation." Dom's jaw tightened. "You did not involve me, Lily." "I stepped in because he was threatening you. Would you prefer I had let him drag you into his car at the lawyer's office?" "I don't know," Lily shouted, the exhaustion and fear finally boiling over. "Maybe. At least then I would know the rules. This is war. Dom, and Emma is in the middle of it. You brought your world to my doorstep, and now Darren is using it to destroy me." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Dom flinched. A microscopic movement, but Lily saw it. The hurt flashed in his eyes before the walls slammed back down. "I did not bring the danger, Lily," Dom said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The danger was already sleeping in your bed for 3 years. I am just the one standing between you and the consequences of his choices." "I can't do this," Lily said, shaking her head. "I feel trapped. I am trapped by him, and I am trapped by you. I am living in a safe house with armed guards. I can't breathe." She looked at him, pleading. "I need space. I need to think clearly without looking at a gun on the table or wondering if the car outside is a friend or an enemy. I need to take Emma somewhere normal for one night." "No," Dom said immediately. "It is not safe." "I will go to Kara's," Lily insisted. Kara was an old waitress friend from the diner, a woman who lived in a boring, quiet suburb 10 miles west, far from the docks and the downtown territories. "Darren doesn't know where she lives. He never cared enough to learn my friends' names. It is neutral ground. Just for one night. Dom, please." Dom looked at her. He saw the desperation in her posture, the way she was vibrating with the need to escape the pressure cooker their lives had become. He knew that if he forced her to stay, he would become the jailer she accused him of being. "One night," Dom conceded, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I will have a car trail you. They will sit on the street." "Fine," Lily said. "Just give me room to breathe." The next morning, the separation felt like a physical tearing. Dom stood in the doorway of the safe house, watching Lily buckle Emma into the back seat of a rental sedan he had procured, one Darren wouldn't recognize. "Call me," Dom said, leaning into the driver's window. "If you see anything, if you feel anything wrong." "I will," Lily promised. She looked at him, her anger from the night before fading into a dull ache of regret. She wanted to reach out, to smooth the worry line between his brows, but she kept her hands on the wheel. "Thank you, Dom." He nodded once, stepped back, and watched her drive away. He felt a cold premonition settle in his gut, a voice whispering that he was making a mistake. 4 hours later, Dominic Moretti was pacing the floor of his command center at the mansion. Monitors lined the walls, displaying feeds from his properties and the docks. "Sir," said Silas, a young man with nervous energy who ran Dom's cybersecurity. "We have a hit on the encryption." Dom stopped pacing. "Show me," Silas typed furiously, bringing up a transcript of intercepted text messages. We've been monitoring the Ricci family's low-level chatter. They switched to a burner network an hour ago. I just cracked the handshake." Dom scanned the messages. His blood ran cold. Target acquired? Not yet. Waiting for the signal. The ex says he knows where the friend lives. West Side. Grab them both. The girl is the priority. The boss wants the shipping lane leverage by tonight. West Side, Dom whispered. Darren didn't know Kara's address, but he followed her. "Sir?" Silas asked. Darren didn't follow Lily. Dom realized, the horror dawning on him. He followed Kara. He must have stalked Lily's friends weeks ago to get leverage. "Get the cars!" Dom roared, turning to Marco. "Now, and get me Lily on the phone." In the quiet, tree-lined suburb of West Harborview, the afternoon was deceptively peaceful. Lily sat at Kara's kitchen island, helping Emma glue dry macaroni onto a piece of construction paper. The smell of baking cookies filled the air, a scent of normalcy that made Lily's shoulders finally relax. "I am going to make a sun," Emma declared, holding up a pasta shell. "That is a beautiful sun," Lily said, smiling. Kara, a stout woman with a loud laugh and a heart of gold, walked into the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I'm going to step out back and take this call from my sister," she said, waving her phone. "She is drama, as always. Keep an eye on the cookies?" "Of course," Lily said. Kara opened the sliding glass door to the patio. She left it cracked open just an inch to hear the oven timer. Lily turned back to Emma. "Okay, now we need blue for the sky." Her phone was in her purse, which sat on the counter near the fridge. It began to vibrate. Lily glanced at it, seeing Dom's name flashing. She felt a pang of guilt. He was checking in. She decided to finish the glue stick with Emma before answering. Not wanting to interrupt the moment, that decision cost her everything. A sudden, sharp scream from the backyard shattered the peace. Lily's head snapped up. "Kara?" Before she could move, the sliding glass door was thrown open with violent force. It slammed against its track, the glass rattling threateningly. Two men in dark windbreakers burst into the kitchen. They moved with military precision. One of them, a man with a thick neck and dead eyes, lunged for Lily. "Run, Emma!" Lily screamed, shoving her daughter off the stool. Emma scrambled back, dropping the glue stick, her eyes wide with terror. Lily grabbed a heavy ceramic bowl from the counter and swung it, but the man caught her wrist mid-air. He twisted it, hard. Lily cried out as pain shot up her arm, the bowl shattering on the floor. He spun her around, clamping a hand over her mouth and pinning her arms against her sides. "Quiet," the man growled. The second man scooped Emma up as if she weighed nothing. Emma kicked and screamed, flailing her small limbs, but he just tucked her under his arm like a parcel. Then, Darren walked in. He strolled through the open door as if he were attending a dinner party. He stepped over the shattered ceramic, a look of triumphant madness on his face. He was wearing the same suit from the mediation, now rumpled and stained. He walked right up to Lily, who was struggling uselessly against the enforcer's grip. Her muffled screams vibrated against the man's palm. Darren leaned in close, his face inches from hers. His eyes were bright, feverish. "You thought you could run to him?" Darren hissed, his breath hot on her face. "You thought you could hide my daughter from me?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He tapped it against Lily's cheek, a mocking gesture. "You are coming to sign those papers now. Lily," he whispered. The words echoed in her mind, a twisted callback to the law office. But this time there was no Dom to step through the door. There was no savior. "Let's go," Darren ordered the men. "The boss is waiting." They dragged Lily and Emma out the back door, through the yard where Kara lay slumped on the grass, groaning and holding her head. They were thrown into a nondescript van waiting in the alleyway. The doors slammed shut, sealing them in darkness. Dom's convoy was weaving through traffic at 90 miles an hour, sirens blaring from the lead car, a favor called in from a corrupt police captain. But Dom knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was too late. He dialed Kara's number again. This time, someone picked up. "Hello?" The voice was weak, dazed. "Kara," Dom barked. "Where are they?" "They took them," Kara sobbed. Men! They came through the back. Darren was with them. Oh God, my head. Dom hung up. He threw the phone against the dashboard, cracking the screen. They have them, Dom said, his voice void of all emotion. It was the voice of a man who had already killed the people responsible in his mind. Track Darren's phone. I don't care if he turned it off. Ping the last known tower. Find me that van. Heading toward the docks, Silas's voice came over the car's speaker system. Sector 4, the old cannery. It is Ricci territory. Sector 4 is a kill box, Marco warned from the passenger seat. One way in, one way out. Then we make a new way in, Dom said. He stared out the windshield, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Guilt, heavy and corrosive, burned in his chest. He had let her go. He had listened to her plea for space instead of his instinct for survival. I promised her. He thought, I told her she was not helpless. And now she is in the hands of butchers. If they touch her, Dom whispered to the empty air, I will burn this entire city to the ground. The warehouse smelled of brine, rust, and old fish. It was a cavernous, rotting structure on the edge of the abandoned wharf, where the sea breeze whistled through holes in the corrugated metal roof. Lily sat on a rusted metal chair in the center of the concrete floor. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back, the plastic digging into her skin. 10 feet away, Emma was tied to a support beam. They hadn't bound her tightly, just enough to keep her from running. She was curled in a ball, sobbing quietly into her stuffed rabbit, which had somehow made the journey with them. Darren was pacing back and forth in front of Lily, his shoes clicking on the concrete. He was manic, waving a folder of papers in the air. It was all supposed to be simple, Darren ranted, kicking a piece of debris. I had the buyer for the bar. I had the loans lined up. All you had to do was sign the bakery over. But no, you had to go and find yourself a boyfriend. He stopped, leaning down to scream in Lily's face. You ruined my deal, Lily, you embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself. Darren, Lily said, her voice shaking but defiant. You are working with the Ricci family? Do you have any idea what they do? They will kill us all once they get what they want. Shut up, Darren shouted. We are partners. They respect me. They know I am the one who brought them the leverage. You are a delivery boy, a deep, gravelly voice said from the shadows. A heavy metal door rolled open. A man walked in, flanked by 4 armed guards. He was short, thick-set, wearing an expensive coat that looked out of place in the filth of the warehouse. It was Sal Ricci, the underboss. Darren straightened up, fixing his tie. Sal, I told you I would deliver. Here they are. Now, about the debt forgiveness and the... Shut up, Darren, Sal said, not even looking at him. Sal walked over to Lily. He looked at her with cold, dead eyes. You are the waitress that has Moretti tying himself in knots. I expected more. Let my daughter go, Lily said. She is a child. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this, Sal said. He snapped his fingers. One of his men set up a tripod with a video camera facing Lily. Here is the plan, Sal said, lighting a cigarette. We are going to record a little video. In it, you are going to say that Dominic Moretti kidnapped you and your daughter. You are going to say he forced you to sign over your assets to his shell companies. You are going to cry. You are going to beg for help. I won't do it, Lily said. You will, Sal said calmly, because if you don't, my friend over there is going to start cutting fingers off the little girl. Lily stopped breathing. She looked at Emma, who was watching them with wide, terrified eyes. And once we have the video, Sal continued, blowing smoke toward the ceiling, we send it to Moretti. We tell him we will trade the original file and your lives for the shipping route rights on Pier 9. He signs, we get the route. And then you let us go? Lily asked, though she already knew the answer. Sal smiled. It was a shark smile. Darren here seems to think so, but loose ends are messy. Miss Carter, and you have seen our faces. Darren stepped forward, looking confused. Wait, Sal, that wasn't the deal. You said we would scare them, get the money, and I would take them back to the city. I am taking custody of the kid. Sal turned to Darren and sighed. You really are an idiot, aren't you? You think we are going to leave witnesses? You are a witness. Darren's face went pale. He backed up a step. No, we are partners. We are done talking, Sal said. He nodded to the man at the camera. Start rolling. The red light on the camera blinked on. Read the script. Sal ordered Lily, holding up a cue card. Lily looked at the card, then she looked at Emma. She opened her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Screech! The sound came from outside, a deafening squeal of tires on asphalt, followed by the heavy thud of vehicles ramming into the barricaded doors. What was that? Darren yelled. Spinning around, Sal pulled a gun from his coat. It's him! Get into position! The warehouse lights suddenly flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed the room. Emma screamed. Lily strained against her bonds, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. Don't move, Sal shouted in the dark. Anyone moves, I shoot the girl. Silence fell over the warehouse. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the sound of Emma's whimpering. Then a voice echoed from the rafters. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was calm, low, and terrifyingly familiar. If you point a weapon at that child again, Dominic Moretti's voice promised from the void, I will peel the skin from your bones. Lily slumped in her chair, a sob of relief breaking through her terror. He had come. I can see you, Sal, Dom's voice continued, shifting location now, closer. But you cannot see me. You have 5 seconds to drop your weapons, or everyone in this room dies. Show yourself, Darren screamed, firing a shot blindly into the dark. The muzzle flash illuminated his terrified face for a split second. 1, Dom counted. 2. The sound of breaking glass came from the skylights above. 3. Lily closed her eyes and prayed. The count hit 3, and the world above them exploded. High in the rafters, a single gunshot rang out, shattering the heavy industrial floodlight hanging directly over the center of the warehouse. A cascade of sparks rained down like a waterfall of fire, sizzling as they hit the damp concrete floor. The sudden noise and the shower of blinding light sent Darren into a panic. He flinched violently, shielding his eyes with his forearm, his grip on reality slipping as fast as his control over the room. Move! Dom's voice roared from the darkness, no longer a disembodied threat but a physical command. Dom's men surged from the entrances, their tactical lights cutting through the gloom, turning the warehouse into a strobe-lit nightmare for the Ricci enforcers. Sal Ricci, realizing instantly that the tide had turned, ducked behind a stack of shipping crates, abandoning his post, but Darren did not run. Driven by a cornered rat's instinct, he lunged toward the support beam. He grabbed Emma, hauling her up by the waist. "Stay back!" Darren screamed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched shriek. He held Emma in front of him like a shield, backing away into the shadows. "I will make everyone regret this. I swear it. Do not come any closer." The movement froze the room. Dom, who had been advancing with the predatory speed of a panther, stopped dead 10 feet away. He raised his flashlight, illuminating Darren's sweaty, manic face and Emma's terrified expression. Dom lowered his weapon instantly. He raised his empty hands, palms open, showing Darren he was stopping. "Easy," Dom said. His voice dropped an octave, becoming steady, calm and anchoring. "Darren, look at me. The gun is down." Darren was shaking, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "You ruined everything. She was supposed to sign. It was supposed to be mine." Dom ignored him. He shifted his gaze slightly, locking eyes with the 6-year-old girl trembling in Darren's grip. "Emma," Dom said softly, though his voice carried clearly in the silent warehouse. Emma sniffled, tears tracking through the grime on her cheeks. She looked at the man in the dark suit, the man who had bought her a stuffed bunny and treated her mother like a queen. "Do you remember what I told you in the kitchen?" Dom asked, his tone conversational, as if they were discussing breakfast rather than life and death. "I promised I would keep you safe. Do you remember?" Emma nodded, a small, jerky movement. "Yes, I keep my promises," Dom said. "Trust me. Close your eyes." Emma squeezed her eyes shut tight. Behind Darren, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. It was Russo. He had moved silently through the chaos while Dom held Darren's focus. Dom's eyes flickered upward for a fraction of a second. Another sharp crack echoed from the rafters. A second light fixture, this one directly to Darren's left, exploded in a shower of glass and sparks. Darren flinched toward the noise, his grip loosening for just a heartbeat. That was all Russo needed. He lunged, grabbing Emma by the back of her coat and yanking her out of Darren's arms with a force that sent Darren stumbling sideways. Russo shielded the girl with his massive body, dragging her behind a wall of crates before Darren could regain his balance. "No!" Darren howled. He spun around, wild-eyed, seeing that his leverage was gone. His gaze landed on Lily. She was still bound to the chair, struggling to free her hands, her eyes wide with relief that her daughter was safe. "You!" Darren snarled. "If I can't have my life, no one will!" He grabbed a jagged piece of broken pallet wood from the floor, wielding it like a club, and charged at Lily. "Lily!" Dom shouted. Dom didn't run. He exploded forward. He intercepted Darren 3 feet from the chair. He didn't use technique or martial arts. He lowered his shoulder and tackled Darren with the raw, brutal force of a freight train. The 2 men crashed to the concrete floor, rolling over the debris and glass. The impact knocked the wind out of Darren, but he fought with the desperate, flailing energy of a man with nothing left to lose. He swung the wood, striking Dom's shoulder, but Dom didn't even flinch. Dom grabbed Darren's collar and slammed him back against the floor. This wasn't the cinematic fighting of movies. It was ugly, heavy, and visceral. Dom rained down punches, his fists connecting with a sickening thud against Darren's ribs and jaw. All the rage Dom had suppressed, the anger at the bruises on Lily's arm, the terror of the empty safe house, the image of Emma used as a shield, poured out of him. "You touched her," Dom growled, landing a blow that split Darren's lip. "You dared to touch them." Darren went limp, his hands falling away, but Dom didn't stop. He pulled his arm back for another strike, his eyes glazed with a red mist of fury. He was ready to end it. He was ready to cross the line he had walked for years. "Dom, stop!" The scream cut through the haze. Lily had broken free. One of Dom's men had cut her zip ties, and she scrambled across the floor, ignoring the pain in her stiff limbs. She threw herself at Dom, grabbing his raised arm with both hands. "Stop!" Lily begged, tears streaming down her face. "Dom, look at me! He's done! It is over!" Dom froze. His fist hovered in the air, trembling with tension. He looked down at Darren, who was wheezing and bloody but alive. Then he looked up at Lily. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and dirt, but her eyes were clear. She wasn't looking at him with fear. She was looking at him with love and with a desperate plea for him to save himself. "Do not do this," Lily whispered, her hands shaking on his forearm. "Do not let him turn you into this. We are safe. Emma is safe. Please." Dom's chest heaved. He stared at her, the red fading from his vision, replaced by the gray steel of control. He looked at his own fist, then at the man beneath him. He exhaled a long, shuddering breath. Dom slowly lowered his hand. He unclenched his fist. He stood up, adjusting his suit jacket with a sharp tug, and stepped back. "Get him out of here," Dom ordered his men, his voice hoarse. "Tie him up and find Ricci. I want them all waiting for the police." The flashing red and blue lights of the police cruisers cut through the night, illuminating the grim facade of the warehouse district. But for once, the sirens were not coming for Dom. Dom's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, had been busy. While Dom was breaching the warehouse, Blackwood had walked into the district attorney's office with a briefcase full of evidence. Forged loan documents, recordings of Darren's threats, and financial trails linking the Ricci syndicate to Darren's fraud. Lily stood by the open door of an ambulance, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Emma was sitting inside the vehicle, holding Mr. Bunn, being checked over by a kind paramedic. She was shaken, but physically unharmed. Dom stood a few feet away, speaking to a detective he knew. He pointed to the zip-tied line of men sitting on the curb, Darren and the Ricci enforcers. Darren looked defeated, his head hanging low, the fight completely gone from him. "We have everything we need, mister." "Moretti," the detective said, tucking a notepad into his pocket. "Kidnapping, extortion, fraud, and with the evidence your counsel provided, Mr. Cole is looking at 20 years minimum. He'll never get near that little girl again. Make sure of it, Dom said quietly. The detective walked away. Dom turned and looked at Lily. He looked exhausted. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving him looking mortal. He walked over to her. "Lily," he said. Lily didn't wait for him to speak. She stepped away from the ambulance and collided with him, burying her face in his chest. Dom let out a breath and wrapped his arms around her. He held her tight, lifting her slightly off the ground, burying his face in her hair. He held her as if she were the only thing keeping him upright. "I am sorry," Dom murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry you were ever dragged into this. I should have stopped it sooner." Lily pulled back just enough to look at him. She reached up, her thumb brushing a smudge of dirt from his cheek. "You saved us," she said fiercely. "You came for us. I would burn the world down to save you," Dom said, and the terrifying sincerity in his voice made her heart stutter. "I would do it all again, every second of it." The mansion was quiet, the kind of deep, heavy silence that only comes after a storm. Emma was asleep in the guest room, exhausted by the night's trauma. Elena, the housekeeper, was sitting in a chair in the hallway outside her door, knitting, refusing to leave her post. Downstairs in the dimly lit living room, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Lily sat on the plush velvet sofa, staring into the flames. She had showered and changed into soft clothes, but she still felt the phantom sensation of the zip ties on her wrists. Dom walked in. He had showered too, scrubbing the violence from his skin. He wore dark slacks and a black t-shirt, looking stripped down and vulnerable. He carried 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to her and sat down, not on the chair across from her, beside her, close. "Is she sleeping?" Dom asked. "Like a rock," Lily said. She took a sip of the wine, the rich liquid warming her chest. "She thinks you are a superhero. She told the paramedic that her friend Dom beat up the bad guys." Dom let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I am no hero. Lily, you saw that tonight. I almost killed him." "But you didn't," Lily said. She turned on the cushion to face him. "You stopped." "Because of you," Dom said. He looked at his glass. "When I saw that empty chair in the kitchen, when I realized they had you." He looked up, and his eyes were raw. "I was ready to trade it all. Lily, the shipping route, the territory, my own freedom. I would have signed anything Sal Ricci put in front of me if it meant you walked out of there alive." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She set her glass down on the coffee table with a trembling hand. "You would have given up everything?" she whispered. "It means nothing," Dom said, shaking his head. "The business, the money. It is just noise. Standing in that warehouse, I realize that none of it matters if I have to come home to an empty house." Lily felt tears prick her eyes again, but they weren't sad tears. They were the overflow of a heart that was finally, truly full. "I was so scared," Lily admitted, her voice shaking. "Not just of dying. I was scared that I would never get to tell you. That I realized something too." "What?" Dom asked softly. "That I was wrong about being trapped," Lily said. "I thought safety meant being alone. I thought it meant not needing anyone. But when I was in that chair, all I could think about was you. I realized that home isn't a place. Dom, it isn't an apartment or a bakery. Home is the feeling I get when you look at me." She reached out, her hand resting on his knee. "Home is being safe in your arms. It is being seen and being chosen." Dom stared at her, his expression shattering. He set his glass down next to hers. "Come here," he rasped. Lily didn't hesitate. She moved, climbing onto his lap, straddling his legs. Dom's arms came around her instantly, locking around her waist, pulling her flush against him. They fit together as if they had been made for this. 2 jagged pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Dom looked up at her, his hands sliding up her back, pressing her closer. "I choose you, Lily, every day, for as long as I breathe." Lily framed his face with her hands. "I choose you, too." She lowered her mouth to his. The kiss was slow, deep, and devastatingly tender. It tasted of relief. It tasted of wine and smoke and promises kept. Dom kissed her like he was worshipping her, his lips moving over hers with a reverence that made her ache. Then, the heat flared. Lily made a soft sound in her throat, her fingers threading through his damp hair, pulling him closer. Dom groaned, his hold on her waist tightening. The kiss grew urgent, hungry. It was a reaffirmation of life after staring death in the face. His hands roamed over her back, memorizing the curve of her spine, the softness of her waist. He touched her with a possessive weight, anchoring her to him. Lily pressed against him, feeling the hard wall of his chest, the rapid thud of his heart matching her own. She felt strong. She felt powerful. For the first time in years, she wasn't a victim or a mother or a waitress. She was a woman desired by a man who would burn the world for her. Dom broke the kiss, trailing his lips across her jawline, down to the sensitive cord of her neck. "You will never sign anything out of fear again," Dom whispered against her skin, his voice a vibration she felt in her bones. "No more papers. No more threats. You are mine to protect. Only mine." "Yours," Lily breathed, tilting her head back to give him better access. "I am yours." He pulled her back up to face him. His eyes searched hers, dark and full of a fierce, terrifying love. "And you are mine," Lily added, tracing the line of his jaw with her thumb. "No more facing the dark alone." Dom closed his eyes, leaning his cheek into her hand. "Deal." They stayed there for a long time, the fire dying down to embers in the hearth. They curled together on the sofa, fully clothed but wrapped in a warmth that went deeper than skin. They shared soft kisses and quiet laughter, whispering about the future, about the bakery, about Emma's school, about the messy, complicated, beautiful life they were going to build. On the side table, next to the empty wine glasses, stood a framed photo Dom had placed there earlier that day. It was a candid shot of Emma laughing in the garden. It was the first piece of a new family portrait. It wasn't a perfect family. It wasn't entirely lawful, but it was built on hard choices, on fierce love, and on the decision to stop running and start living. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the large plate glass windows of Emma's Hearth Bakery, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The shop smelled of heaven, yeast, cinnamon, vanilla, and dark roast coffee. Lily stood behind the counter, wiping down the gleaming espresso machine. She wore a white chef's coat with her name embroidered on the breast pocket. She looked tired, but it was a good tired, the tired of a woman who had woken up at 4 a.m. to do what she loved for a business she owned. The bell above the door chimed. Lily looked up, a smile blooming on her face. Dom walked in. He was wearing a suit, as always, but his tie was loose, and he looked relaxed. He held the hand of a little girl who was skipping beside him. Emma was wearing a miniature version of Lily's apron, covered in flour. "Mommy!" Emma yelled, letting go of Dom's hand and running behind the counter. "Dom let me pick the music in the car." "We listened to the soundtrack to the Princess movie 3 times. 3 times? Lily asked, raising an eyebrow at Dom. Dom leaned against the counter, looking at her with that familiar, smoldering heat in his eyes. "I have developed a high tolerance for power ballads." "You are a saint," Lily laughed. A customer, an elderly woman who was waiting for her baguette, watched the interaction with a smile. "What a lovely family," the woman said. "Is your husband in the business too?" Lily froze for a split second. She looked at Dom. He wasn't her husband, not legally, not yet. He was a man with a complicated past and a dangerous present. He was a silent investor who had made this place possible. Dom looked back at her. He didn't say a word. He just waited, his eyes steady and sure. Lily smiled. She reached across the counter and took Dom's hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Yes," Lily said firmly. "We are." Dom squeezed her hand, lifting it to his lips for a quick kiss that made the elderly woman blush. "2 coffees, please," Dom said softly. "And a cinnamon roll for the kid. I hear the owner makes the best in the city." "She does," Lily whispered, leaning in to kiss him. "And they are on the house. Thank you so much for reading this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Lily, Dom, And Emma, as much as I enjoyed writing it, I would love to know where you're listening from. Please leave a comment below sharing your country or city. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for more emotional, realistic, and passionate tales. Don't forget to share your thoughts on the ending in the comments. Thank you for your support.